My name is Sam Cooper, at least it's now Sam Cooper. I was born with the name of Zacharia Kupperberg in Helen, Poland, around March 1st, 1922. Even that's a problem, because I do not have a birth certificate. However, when we came to this country, my dad registered my brother and me to in Mesa school, and they asked a birth date, and he said he knew it's someplace around Purim that year. So he said March 1st, 1922, and gave Jack's birth as April 1, 1920, because he was born almost 2 years ahead of me. We spent the first 7 years or so at least my 7 years or so, in Poland before coming to America. Uh, we were known as the Americanas in Poland because everybody knew that my dad was in America trying to raise enough money to send us money for a ticket to go to America. Um, so we were actually in a very well-to-do area in Poland. We lived in the same courtyard, so to speak, with the mayor of the city. And in my mind's eye, I can still imagine what that courtyard looked like, and that's one of the few real memories that I have of Poland. I've never been back there. Sometimes I think of like to go. I almost went when I was in the army, but they couldn't get transportation at that time, so I didn't go.
Sam, when did your father come to this country?
He came approximately 1926, 24, 26 in that area.
What prompted him to come to Omaha?
Well, my Uncle Harry was here already and established. My Uncle Harry and my dad came from a family living in Russia. Dad was in Poland, met my mother there. He was he was captured by the Austrian-Hungarians in the World War One, and afterwards he was released and met my mother, who was working in a candy store, and got married, and eventually 3 sons were born to them, and I was the middle son.
What other recollections do you have of Poland growing up?
I remember a neighbor, a Christian neighbor, and she invited us in during the Christmas seasons, and I remember particularly at that time getting a pomeranzen, which was an orange wrapped in tinfoil. And so that was a real occasion. I remember too the sort of the main street of Halab, where there were shops, and then the place where the mikveh was, and things of that nature. I remember being across the street where there was a store and where they had a big barrel, had herring in it. So you dump your hand in there and pick out a herring, that type of thing. And in the basement of the store was our shul. It seems like in that time, in that place, that we had shuls every few blocks in the community.
What kind of work did your father do?
The part I remember, of course, is that he was in the grocery business. He started out in Omaha when he came here with Tuckman Brothers. Well, he started to do labor and work for my Uncle Harry that didn't last very long, as I understand it. Then he went to work for Tuckman Brothers, who had well, one big store now around 24th Lake, and eventually he tried to get in business for himself. The story I get from my father was that with $500 he started a store at 21st and St. Mary's Avenue, and that's where we arrived at the very end of 1929.
What kind of work did your father do in Poland?
He didn't. He just got released from the army, or he was actually a prisoner of war in the Austrian army.
Did you have any other family living in Poland at that time?
We had, but I don't remember. My mother had a sister there, and I think my brother Jack probably would remember those type of things probably better than I could.
What was your earlier recollections of coming to Omaha?
Well, my mother and my older brother and I traveled together. We went on we went from Hallam to Warsaw, as I remember, and then I think it was Bremen, Germany, and took a boat. It was called the SS Leviathan from when I think, if I'm not mistaken, Liverpool, England, and came to America. My brother and I have a little dispute on that, and he's probably correct, in that we didn't go through Ellis Island. We went because we were coming under the derivative citizenship of through my dad, that we came right away to Manhattan Island and got off there, where we stayed a few days with the and I remember the representatives from the Hayas came and accommodated us as far as getting hotel rooms and food. After 2 or 3 days, I think, in New York City, we took a train to Omaha, and Dad was supposed to meet us at the airport. Excuse me, at the train depot, and nobody met us. So my mother and my brother and I got in a cab, and we drove to the store and just walked in and in a way surprised Dad.
How long were you in New York, did you say?
2 or 3 days, I think it was.
Did you have anyone other than the Hayas to meet you?
No, not that I recollect.
Do you remember any of your early memories of arriving in New York, the big city?
Well, it was a tremendous thing, especially to a child that was about 7 years old. But I didn't realize the historical or the world position of New York. I'm sure of that.
At this time, Sam, did you only speak Yiddish in the house?
That's right.
Do you still speak Yiddish?
Not very well. I know what people are saying usually in Yiddish, but I can carry on sort of a mixture of English and Yiddish.
How about Polish? Did you retain any of that?
Just 2 or 3 words of that. Jak się masz, that type of thing.
So once you arrived here, tell me about that a little bit.
Well, my dad had the store at the living quarters was in the back of the store, and so we stayed there for several days, and I think through the efforts of my uncle and my dad, a reporter from the Omaha Bee News and the Omaha World Herald were called, and they took pictures of us and put it on the, as I recollect, the front page of the newspapers. We found those, some of those around, but I don't know if I can find them now.
That had to be quite an experience for your father, seeing his family walk into the store.
He did. And the photographs too showed you how much science and photography has taken place since those days. It was the old-fashioned cameras with a guy holding up sort of a powder thing, sounded like a gun going off, and took those pictures.
You were 7 years old, you say, when you arrived?
Yeah, I was going to be 8 in March, let's say, and this was December, so about 3 months shy of 8 years old.
Was this 1930?
1929.
29.
The end of 1929.
How was starting school then, Sam, not knowing English very well?
Well, they put us in Mason School, and I think it was Mrs. Paxton that was our teacher, and I think it was in the first grade on that. And we also had a special teacher, Mrs. Maynard, if I can recall, who came in once a week to help students out with language or pronunciation or talking problems. And we had some difficulty, like we couldn't distinguish between a W and a V in our conversations and pronunciations. And that turned out pretty well, because when I later on went to high school, I took public speaking, and that also gave you a certain amount of education. And then if you're around other people who just talk English, you learn rapidly.
But growing up during those years, the conversation at home was in Yiddish for the
Pretty
most
much
part?
so, yeah. At least I understood my mother when she wanted to give me the devil or something.
Tell me a little bit about your parents, Sam.
Well, let's see, what can I tell about my parents? My dad had this grocery store. It was really a mom and pop operation. And before long, Mother was helping at the store, and so was Jack and I. And then around September of 1930, along came my redheaded brother, David, who you know, I'm sure. I think he was close to your birthday, was he? Yeah. What birthday were you?
December.
December of that year. I remember being teased by Dad a lot of times when, you know, you're tempted to take a piece of candy or, let's see, a pear or an apple or something of that nature. Dad would say, there goes the profit from the case of apples or whatever it was. And so we soon learned not to nibble too much at the store. Dad moved from moved the store from 21st and St. Mary's to 24th and Jones. And that time they were, I think he went into the Red and White organization, which I'm sure you remember because your dad was also a Red and White store. And the wholesaler was H.A. Marr Company, I remember that. Down on about 10th and Jones on that. And Dad was there till in that store till World War II. During that time, Dad moved to the store to Park Avenue and on near Poplar Street.
And you continued working in the store?
Yeah, well, Yes. Uh, uh, but when World War II started, we were at 24th and Jones. We heard the news on the radio about Pearl Harbor one Sunday morning, and we didn't realize immediately where it was, but we knew that the Japanese were bombing the harbor, and a lot of people were killed. My brother Jack volunteered at the Army right away. I finished, I think, a year, well, part of the year, I think it was, between graduating from Central High and going to the University of Omaha. Anyhow, I went in the Army, I think it was January 1943.
You went from Mason School to Central High.
Yeah.
What school did your brother Jack go to?
He went to Tech High. So did my brother David.
Tell me about your years at Central.
Well, they were pretty good years. I enjoyed it very much and that. Dad took us to the school from, in his car. I remember going there several times on that. I stayed about 4.5 years in high school because I didn't expect to go to college. They fixed it up so I wouldn't get tuition by taking part of my course in one term and the finishing part of the course in another one, so that I wouldn't be charged extra tuition. I had about 1.5 credits for my diploma, so that wasn't any problem. And then I won this essay contest in the summer between my junior and senior year. And with that $1,000 award I got on the national essay contest, I found the wherewithal to attend the University of Omaha.
Tell me about that essay contest.
It was sponsored by the Ladies Auxiliary of the Veterans of Foreign Wars, and it was on the topic of the benefits of democracy. And the way I got into it, we were taking debate from debate coach Warner, and he suggested that I enter this contest, prepare an oration, I called it at that time, and submit it, see what happens. So I wrote this essay, and luckily I won the local, the state, and the national contest at that time.
And this was tuition money then for college.
Yeah.
How much college did you get underway before you went into the service?
I think just about a year. And then, we had to register, or we had already registered for the draft. And in the course of events, we were called up and submitted yourself for physical and mental evaluation.
What year did you graduate high school?
June of 1941.
And a year then at the University of Omaha,
Yeah.
then into the service.
Right.
I want to hear about your service time.
Oh gosh. We started out and they sent us to Fort Leavenworth in Kansas. And I stayed there about 3 weeks inducting other GIs into the service, giving them, helping out in the measurements of their chest and things of that nature. And then they gave us, I remember this very vividly, I came home one weekend sort of surprised, and nobody was home in our house. So I started to make some calls. I had a key to the house and went in and made some calls, and guess where my folks were? With your folks. You know, so this was like at a late Saturday night, and then of course they came home, and I got to sleep in my own bed. Then either Sunday or Monday that day, that weekend, I went back to Fort Leavenworth. Um, the food was good. I remember that. There's a lot of food that I wasn't used to. And then they shipped me and others to Miami, Florida, Miami Beach, Florida, where the Air Force took over a number of hotels there, or practically the whole town, as I remember, and we were doing drills in the golf park there that they had, and they also had a very fancy theater for the lectures and that. And we didn't have the deluxe accommodations, of course, that was formally, as we understand it, but we got 2 or 3 in each room, but it was nice. And then they started something called ASTP. I think it was Army Specialized Training Program or something of that nature. They wanted engineers, particularly, and I got selected. I went to Clark University in Worcester, Massachusetts. But after 6 months, the program folded, and and of course at Clark University we had nice little bunk beds and with nice white sheets and so forth. Then they took us directly with the 26th Division, which was on maneuvers in Tennessee, with the rain and the mud and all that. So that we struggled through that finally. After that, let's see what happened then. Well, we went to a couple other locations. One was Fort Benning. One was Charleston, South Carolina. What was the name of that? Can't think of that right now. For further training, and then we went overseas, and sometimes after we got our training, they broke us up in sort of individual units. I ended up with a quartermaster, and we went overseas to England, where I met my brother Jack. We took a photograph in Reading, England. This was done by the time of the Bulge action in Europe, and they were, getting more people to replace those people who were being killed. And but anyhow, our unit stayed together in the Quartermaster Corps, and we went to a place called Charleroi, Belgium, where we operated a Class 1 depot, which was a large one containing food and clothes and ammunition. And the labor, though, was done by German prisoners of war on that. And there was a Jewish man who was in charge of the prisoners, and you can imagine he was pretty tough on the prisoners of war, the German prisoners of war. He invited us over for a Passover GI, and that I remember that. And then peace came in 1945. And I remember the celebration, and we were riding around in the Jeep and just whooping it up a little bit.
How long did you stay in Belgium then?
I'd say a year and a half, 2 years.
While you were in Belgium and then the war ended, did you have any idea of what had gone on with the Jewish people in Europe?
We had an inkling of it, but the horror wasn't really out until after the war. I remember getting, the army newspapers like the Yank, Stars and Stripes, and with showing Eisenhower visiting these camps. And what a horrible thing that was.
When did you then return to the United States?
Well, not yet. The war with Japan wasn't over with yet. So they took us, I remember going from Belgium to Marseille, France. And then we got on a ship that went through the Panama Canal. And we got off one evening going through the, what do you call those?
Locks.
The locks, right, in Panama. And then on the way over, our destination was the Philippines. And the way over, we got the news that the atomic bomb was exploded. And then I was followed up by followed up by Japanese surrender, because they bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Like, what's the name of the second? Name of the city was Nagasaki, I think it was, on that. And of course, at that time we were absolutely elated, because it meant that eventually we'll be going home and there wouldn't be any war, because they estimated the casualties, in millions to invade Japan. They were very tough customers.
Did the war end then while you were still on the boat?
Yes, but we continued our trip to the Philippines, and we operated a depot there, and the work was done by Japanese for so long.
How long were you in the Philippines?
Very little, about 6 months, I think it was. And I remember one trip there, Leroy Canfield. He was stationed in Manila. We got together. I went there on a pass, and we had an incident. We just the other day reminded ourselves where one of the men was driving a Jeep. And Canfield and I were in the back seat, and we went down a steep hill and turned over. And we have one tiny little picture of it, but it isn't very good. And it's an incident that Leroy and I talk about every now and then.
Did you get hurt, or did anyone get hurt?
No. But, you feel a little shocked when something like that happens.
Then when did you return to the United States?
Let's see, that would be someplace I would say February 1946. They took a ship. Incidentally, there was a funny thing happened on that ship. There was a USO troop, and one of the girls in there was a girl by the name of Lenka Isaacson, who was a contemporary with us, Happy Queen, and she was with this USO. So you can imagine, there was 3,000 men, GIs, aboard the ship, and I knew a girl, so to speak. So we visited a few times, and I took the trip to San Francisco, got off there, and saw the Golden Gate. And, let's see, then I went to Fort Logan, Colorado for actual discharge on that. And then back home,
When did you get out of the service? What month was it?
February 46, I think.
So, in returning home, what did you do immediately after you got home?
Just stayed around home there, trying to figure out how to continue my education or what to do with my life. And I talked to several people. Anyhow, the one that sort of persuaded me to go to law school was Ray Simon. On that, he died a few years ago. And that time, Creighton had what they called an accelerated program, which meant that you went for 2 complete years, including the summertime kind of thing. And I graduated in June of 1948.
Did you have enough credits to go right into the law program from before the
Yeah.
service?
I've had about a year and a half of, and they accepted those. And of course, we have the GI Bill of Rights, which is a tremendous program to rehabilitate all the GIs into civilian life. They provided, in my case, tuition money and book money, and it worked out fine because I was still living at home with my folks at that time. So I finished, as I said, in 1948, and went into private practice.
Who did you go into practice with?
Always tried opening my own office in the City National Bank. Another part of the GI Bill of Rights was that if you didn't make I think it was $100 a month, the government would pay you the $100. And I went in with a guy called Joe B. Friedenberg, who helped me out to he was the referee in bankruptcy, and I was the trustee, which meant I represented the debtors of these things, and I got $5 per bankruptcy for doing that service. So just about all the months I squeezed by and made the $100 on my own.
This was in the office with this other man. How long did you stay together?
Perhaps a year. And then Loyal Kaplan was opening up his own office, and I knew him, and he asked me if I wanted to join him. He was, a number of years older, and it turned out to be good. We were specializing then in interstate commerce cases, sort of specialty.
You stayed how long with that operation?
Well, he, for one reason or another, abandoned the practice, and must have been about 3 or 4 years. And then I went with Jack W. Mayer. I think I was with him for, almost 10 years?
Doing just general law?
Yeah. And then, let's see what happened then. I got involved with politics, and particularly during the Adlai Stevenson's campaign for president. And there used to be a guy here by the name of Bernie Boyle, who was the National Democratic Committeeman on that. And he says there's a job opening up in the state government for Douglas County Election Commissioner. And he asked me if I would be interested in that. And at first I was, even though It wasn't a full-time job, but it dovetailed well into my practice. So I was introduced to the governor, and the governor uh, made the nomination, and I was but the governor died in office, and there was sort of a political feud going on between Bernie Boyle and Frank Morrison. And so Frank Morrison was elected governor, and he appointed some other fellow to be the election commissioner. That was the same time, I think, with the Kennedy assassination. Shortly after that, I remember that my wife and I were watching the inaugural of President Kennedy and the famous speech that he made at that time. And we were going to go to Kansas City just to try to cheer up from the loss of this job that I had. And we went, and then, you know, 3 years later he was assassinated.
Did you then stay in private practice after the
Yeah,
election job?
I went with Jack Marion.
Detail that out for me a little bit. What kind of work were you doing in the
Well,
office?
it was, the arrangement was at that time that he'd give me the office space and $50 a month to do some work for him. And that's how it was. But on the other things, I could keep the fee that I made. So it was, at that time, it was a good arrangement. Things are different now.
And what was your next step?
The next step after that, someplace along the line there, Norman Denenberg and Ed Mullery were opening up new offices in the insurance building. I had my office originally in the Omaha National Bank building, and they asked if I wanted to join them, and so I did. And then the insurance building was torn down, and we moved to the back to the Omaha National Bank building. It was, and the three of us practiced law when I was called, to take this job as election commissioner. Are we on? My wife just corrected me that when the insurance building was torn down, they replaced it with the Woodman Tower, and after a short time, the three of us that were in the Omaha National Bank building moved over to the Woodman Tower, a brand new building. And see, where were we now?
I want to hear a little bit about your law practice, some of the things you were doing in practicing law.
Well, it was a concentration of trying to make a living out of the practice of law, so we did just about everything that came along, including divorces and estates, criminal work, drunk driving, collection of rent, eviction cases.
Now, I think before this time, Sam, you met Judy, didn't you?
See, I met Judy
I want to hear about that.
in when did I meet Judy?
May of '63.
That's right. What happened on that, the way we met was that Jack, my brother Jack got a job in Dallas, Texas, and my mother was fearful of him driving by himself and all that, so she asked me to go with him, and first it was easy for me to leave because the practice wasn't that great, you know. So we went down there and I met Judy on a Saturday working in a shoe store in downtown Dallas in 1953, I think it was. Yeah. And so made a date for that night. Made another, and then for that Saturday night, I made a date Sunday night on that. And Sunday night, I decided to stay a little longer in Dallas. And on Monday night, I proposed to Judy. And she jokingly accepted, but I made her stick to the promise. You know. And by that time, I knew this was the girl for me.
I want to hear about your children.
What about that? Well, the first child is Holly, who now lives in Denver, or actually Aurora, Colorado. And she has 2 children and a husband. And she's a school teacher. She has some health problems. She's in pain quite a bit of the time. And as I say, so that makes me have 2 grandchildren through Holly. Then my second oldest was Justin, who is married now. He's got 1 to Joan, and got 1 child. Then my daughter Rana, who lives in Johannesburg, South Africa, has got 6 children, 4 boys and 2 girls. And Marcia Simon, who married Steve Simon, has 2 children, a boy and a girl.
And that must be the pride of your life, aren't they, those grandchildren?
Very nice, very enjoyable people.
Does Rana get here very often?
No, that's what it is. We've been there maybe 4 or 5 times, but so we don't get to see her very much. She's been here maybe, what, 4 times since she got married. We realized the other day she's been longer married than she was with us as a single girl. And they're coming in, well, some of them are coming in Thanksgiving 2 days from now, 3 days from now. And we're trying to celebrate. That's why you see that sign up there.
When did you become a judge, Sam?
Let's see, I was elected a judge in the campaign. Let's see, it was in 1952. Tell me. No, no.
Can you block stuff out?
I feel very fortunate that I have 11 grandchildren, 3 son-in-laws and 1 daughter-in-law. As I told you, Steve and March are husband and wife, Steve Simon. And then there's Joan, who's married to Justin. And we have Mark Emanuel, who is the husband of Rana, who have 6 children. And did I mention their names? Tova Yedida. They're tough names to remember. Tova Yedida, Hani, Yonah Mayer, Eliyahu, Shira, and Ephraim. I think I did a pretty good job of remembering those names. And then Marcia's children, Michelle, who now is attending Dana College and is in my estimation, very much of a basketball star. And her brother Josh, who this last February celebrated his bar mitzvah here. Did I leave anybody out?
I want to hear about Holly's husband and children.
Oh yeah. Holly was married to Abe Zeiderman, and they have two children, Marla, who's studying psychology in Chicago, and Rebecca, who I think just started high school. And she was bat mitzvahed a couple of years ago. Yeah, and my son Justin and his wife Joan have a beautiful daughter named Lauren.
I want to hear about when you first became a judge, Sam.
Let's see, the election was in November of 1972, and it sort of hooked up with Robert McGowan, and we some of the campaigning we did together. I remember Jim Lipsey was my campaign director, so to speak. I remember we had signs on the sides of the buses to elect Cooper judge with scales of justice, and I don't know, I think that helped or something, but anyhow, I got elected. I think it was about 8 or 10 candidates at the time, so just a general election, no primary involved. We started actually being judges in January of 1973. So it's 30 years ago that I became a judge. Seems doesn't seem that long, but apparently it is.
Have you missed the actual practice of law, or do you enjoy being a judge?
I enjoy being a judge very much, and I know some people think I should be retired by now, but I enjoy going down every day, getting up, and there's still a curiosity and fascination about the cases that you hear.
Sam, what is one of the things you like best about being a judge?
One of the best things is that I enjoy the work. The extracurricular stuff like performing weddings, in addition to sitting on the bench, I get a good feeling about performing these ceremonies, and keeps me going and meeting people. And my wife thinks I do a good job too, so I know that it must be a good job. She's usually my severest critic on that. Our practice is pretty generalized. We have, criminal, civil cases, probate cases, adoption cases. So it's a variety doesn't make you dull in an area. As I said, I've enjoyed all that part of it, being a judge, and I'm satisfied with the income that I've had on that. It's a steady job.
Sam, are there any other things about the law that you've really truly enjoyed over the years?
Yes, I especially enjoy adoptions because it's one area of the law that you don't make enemies. Normally, everybody consents to an adoption, and I try to instill in them that to live lives of usefulness to their community, and that they honor their parents when they have the opportunity to do so. And I've enjoyed my own family life. I've enjoyed having my wife and all of my kids, and things are going along, doing pretty well, and I realize what terrible problems we have in the world, try to do something about them. They all married Jewish spouses, and have made me very, very proud of them. My grandchildren are just getting into their own, and they all seem to be doing well. I don't know if I had much to do with making them what they are. I think like a lot of them realize from their own parents, in other words, my children, by setting an example, are coming along real fine, and I appreciate having had these 11 grandchildren for our children.
As you notice here, we have a sign. We have a tendency to make signs when the kids come in. This sign was originally made November 25th, 1991, and we saved it. And now they're coming back on November 27th, 2003. And we've had to add just two names, Shira and Ephraim, which is, we're not here then. And we always try to do something special when the kids come in from South Africa to make them feel welcome. The one thing they've always asked for, number one, is a list of foods. The second thing that they've always said, they have Papa's bed. Papa lays down with them, and they all lay down in bed with Papa. So they're really looking forward to coming in. We are a close family, and we enjoy being together. And Holly and the rest of the family will be coming in later. I think I've had a very good life. I have no regrets. I've had a wonderful life. I'm happy with my husband. Our children are great, and we have adorable grandchildren, as most grandparents will tell you.